Hello. I actually made a video before this when I was still on my way to school, but I had to delete it because it cut off partway through. I actually managed to fill my memory card, partially because I had the last 3 videos or so still on there because I never think to upload them when I'm actually at home. And I got to class, well I got to the bus, and that's when I usually copy the videos from the camera onto the computer, which I did. But then, just as I was finished that and getting ready to convert them, my computer battery died, because I never charged that last night either. So, all of the videos I've made since last night, which was the very dark one, and that was Wednesday night, all of those were still on my camera and are now on my computer, so there's room on my camera to make more videos again, but they're going to get uploaded, who knows really. Maybe tonight if I think about it, but it's more likely to be closer to tomorrow sometimes. Probably tomorrow morning. But we'll see. I might upload tonight. But yeah, tomorrow's Friday, today's Thursday, yesterday was Wednesday, to put all that in context. So, here I am again, and I'm going to be covering some of what I was in the video that cut me off, but now I definitely have enough room to actually say all of it. When I have time for 2 videos during the day, which I have been, now that I'm driving and all that, as long as I prepare my battery situation and all that, as long as I do that, I've got time for at least 2 videos, sometimes more, depending on how much I ramble on about. And, what I like to do is have, and you may have noticed this by now, I like to have one video where I talk about something meaningful, something like, that's important to me, important in a philosophical sense, important possibly to the world as a whole, or, even if it isn't important necessarily, it's all about beliefs, it's all about, just that abstract stuff that everyone can relate to, and that, people who have never watched me before and will never watch me again will get. And so I like to do one video like that, and that was obviously the video before this one, or the video before the video before this one, but the video before this one you won't see. So, if you followed that, what I'm basically saying is that that was that one. But then I like to do one other video where I cover trivial things, things that you only really care about if you're me or you have some interest in my life, which I assume if you're watching this you probably have at least some interest in my life in some way or another. And if not, just turn off my YouTube right now, maybe go watch some of my more philosophical videos. You can usually tell by the title, I try to make them descriptive enough. But maybe I'll even start labeling them, the difference between the two. But as you can probably tell by now, this is going to be one of those trivial videos, talking about what's going on in my life personally, talking about, the weather, talking about that kind of thing. Things that if you don't care about me, you don't care about. So, today, the weather sucks. It was kind of neat when we woke up this morning. Well, I guess when we woke up this morning, maybe even last night we saw it, but my memory of last night isn't that great. But it was snowing, which doesn't happen very often here in North Carolina. But there it was. It snowed. Great. Fantastic. If it had snowed a little bit more, maybe I wouldn't have had school today, but it stopped well before there was any problem, and it was really just a dusting. There wasn't any significant amount of snow anywhere. And now it's raining, which is always lovely. And if it was freezing rain or something, I would not be on the road, but it is just normal above freezing temperature, probably like 35 out rain, and is not affecting my driving in really any way other than the wipers have to be on. There is a lot of water coming up off the road, so my wipers do have to be on fairly fast, but, you know, I deal with it. I'm from New York, so driving in, you know, even icy roads is something that I've done in a pinch. So, you know, driving in the rain is nothing. You know, unless it's like coming down in complete buckets and your visibility is 0, but it's not. So, I want to talk about other things going on in life. Let's see. Okay, well, I don't think I've mentioned this before, but I got Final Fantasy XII for Christmas, and it is an extremely fun game. I highly recommend it. Possibly one of the best Final Fantasies out, and I consider Final Fantasy series to be, you know, the best RPG series. So, it follows that, in my opinion, at least at this time, I think that this is one of the best RPGs I've ever played. It's so great. Yeah, I think I really like what they've done with the battle system. They made it very much... They actually followed, and I think, as much as I despise them for making Final Fantasy XI part of the series, they should not have made Final Fantasy XI. They should have been like Final Fantasy Online or something like that, like they did with Tactics and all the other, you know, all the other games where they take off from the original idea of just an RPG. They have given it a different title, like Final Fantasy Tactics. And they really should have made it Final Fantasy Online or something like that, Final Fantasy XI. But that's a side tangent. The good side of it is I think that the ideas they got from producing that game actually really helped in the evolution of the real Final Fantasy games, like Final Fantasy XII, because there are definitely a lot of massively multiplayer elements of it, despite the fact that it's a one-player, you know, storyline-based cinematic RPG. The battle system in particular, I absolutely love it. You know, they made it so there's no random battles, which is something I always hated about the Final Fantasy series, and really praised the Chrono series for, even though there were only 2 games, and the second one, you know, wasn't as great storyline-wise, and really should have just been a different game. But both of them had an excellent idea for battles. And this takes even a step further. It doesn't even have a separate battle screen. It's just anything that you can fight is out and roaming about. And you can just walk up and start fighting it or try and avoid it. And if you try and avoid it, you have to actually physically run away from it. And that's, you know, now that they have the technology to do that, that's a really nice way to do it. It's more realistic than going off into a separate battle screen and then ending up in the same place and, you know, whatever else you want to do. It's more realistic and it's fun. And I don't think games should be realistic just for the sake of realism, but I do think that if they include a more realism without sacrificing fun, or especially with adding fun, then they should. At least in some cases, you know. Obviously some games are always going to be unrealistic, and that's just part of the game. I'm going off on far too many tangents here. Where was I going? Final Fantasy XII, good game. The gambit system within the combat system is probably really what sells it for me, because essentially not only do you have characters, you know, fighting in real time, sort of, but still with an RPG element of, you know, the timer turn-based thing, but you can actually set up pre-programmed commands for them, you know, artificial intelligence that you create. And so, you know, if you're just fighting, you know, just random things around an area trying to level up, you can set up all your gambits so that the characters will fight for you. All you have to do is like walk up to an enemy and your first character targets it because you have him set to targeting close, and then everyone else targets it because they're set to target whoever the leader is targeting, and everyone just starts fighting. And if someone gets too low on hit points, oh, guess what? You've told one of your characters that when someone's hit points gets below 50, they're supposed to cast a cure spell on them. Great, it's an awesome system, and I love the flexibility of being able to either manually enter commands or pre-program commands. And there are a few more places they could go with it, but they might do that in future games. I definitely really like what they've done with it so far. Okay, enough Final Fantasy rambling. It's an awesome game. If you own a PlayStation 2, you have no excuse not to be playing this game, unless you don't have the time. But then you need to make time, because it's an excellent game. Another game that I've been into for a lot longer, but there's something coming out soon for it, is Dreamblade. That's another game that I actually got cut off talking about in the last video I made that I deleted. It's a really cool game. It's a collectible minis game, much like Mage Knight, HeroClix, all those WizKids collectible minis games. It's a lot like those, except without the little clicky bases, but all the information is still on the base. It's put out by Wizards of the Coast, so, it's probably their best sculpts yet from, all the pre-painted minis I've seen. These are beautiful quality sculpts. Let's see. It does play similar to Magic, but I actually notice more elements of strategy games like chess in it. There's a lot of thinking involved, and a lot of, it's not just about killing your opponent, it's about being in the right places and taking the right territory. And, sometimes, losing some particular ground is better for you in the long run, even if you lose the turn in the short run. There's just so many interesting elements to it, and I've really gotten into this game. The next expansion for the game is coming out tomorrow, which is why it's particularly on my mind, because one of my goals since the beginning of the game is I've wanted to create a Swarm warband. Basically, you are limited to 16 miniatures per warband. It's kind of like Magic and constructing, a deck, quote-unquote, because it's really not point-based like other games where you have, each guy is worth a certain number of points, and you can include a whole bunch of little guys, or a couple of big guys, or somewhere in between. But you just get 16 miniatures. But all of them start off the board, and you, create miniatures onto the board. You spawn them, it's called. And so, if you include too many small ones, then you'll run out of miniatures in your reserves, and therefore, your opponent will have a huge advantage later in the game. And if you have too many big ones, then you won't be able to spawn enough of them, and you only have like 2 or 3 miniatures compared to your opponent's like 6 or 7, and they'll just outnumber you, which has a lot of advantage in this game. So the main way to get around those problems with swarming is mostly resurrecting, bringing creatures back that have already died, whether they're regenerating creatures or whatever else. That is the way that I've wanted to build a warband, is one where it's a bunch of little creatures, and although there's only 16 of them, I recycle them. When they die, they keep coming back, and therefore it's this ongoing flow of swarm. And I think this would be a really neat warband, a really fun one to play. I've always liked, in any game, I've always liked the idea of just sheer outnumbering your opponent with lots of little ones. I want to be the one playing the hordes and hordes of goblins. They're outnumbering the 5 men, and even though the 5 men can kill like 100 goblins each, it's still not enough because I've just got that many goblins, you know? One of those kind of war bands, one of those kind of armies in whatever game I play. I enjoy those tactics, and so I want to apply them to Dreamblade as well. Now, the exciting part about this expansion is that it is, it's focusing on a lineage called the Hivelings, which are a bug-based lineage. You know, they're a whole bunch of little insects. And part of the flavor of this lineage is that they, you know, do have a lot of swarm tactics involved. There are lots and lots of little bugs. And that's what I really want to be able to do with this expansion. I really want this expansion to finally make, you know, the warband I've been envisioning since the start of the game possible. I want to be able to create tons and tons of little bugs that all just, you know, swarm over the dreamscape and take far more territory than my opponent can possibly control. So anyway, that's the concept that I have in mind, that I'm hoping this expansion will allow. So far, you know, any attempts at creating a warband like that just haven't worked. You know, I mean, I can create a warband like that, but it won't function as well or compete as well as, you know, any of the other options. And the one I've been working with recently starts out swarm, and then, you know, as all of the little creatures die, big ones arise. But I'd really much rather just have one that it's like, no, there are no big creatures, it's just lots of little guys. So, we'll see how it goes. I'm very excited because the, spoiler, basically Wizards of the Coast usually, at least, you know, this past time, has released the entire set on their website like the night before it actually comes out. So there should be stats on the website of all the creatures in Chrysothic Plague tonight. I don't know when it'll go up tonight, but I'm really looking forward to it. Really hope that it's, you know, somewhat soon, because I'm going to be at work, and I have internet access at work, and I'll probably get a chance to peek through those miniatures. So I guess that's about it for Dreamblade right now. I think I mentioned in my topics video I'd like to do a couple of videos teaching the general YouTube audience how to play Dreamblade. And those will be whenever I find time that I can actually, you know, sit down with my camera and do such a video. I obviously can't do them in the car. But that would be a fun thing to do with that. Other things in my life. Oh, Death Note. I mentioned it some in my reply to Shai's video, because, you know, she obviously talked about Death Note a lot. And I only recently, and in fact really it was watching her video that made me think of it, I kind of came to the realization that, you know, although the anime is, you know, has just been licensed and is going to slowly come to America, the manga is already in America. And I kind of looked over the summaries of the first few volumes of the manga and realized that, you know, the TV show episodes that I've seen, which I've seen up to 13, I think 14 is already subtitled, but the ones I've seen only cover the storyline up until about the 4th volume of the manga, and there are already 9 volumes out. So there's more than double the storyline that I've seen already out in manga form. And the first 2 volumes of it are at my store right now, the place I work that I'm driving to. So I'm going to have to use my employee discount and, you know, start collecting that, because, yeah, I think I already talked about this, about how, yeah, seeing it in purest form, whatever. That was all rambling during my dark video. Which I looked, it is really dark. I only saw it on the camera screen, but I couldn't even see me, so I hope you could if you wanted to, but, you know, maybe just my disembodied voice talking from the darkness is enough for you. I don't know. I guess that's about all. That's all that comes immediately to mind as far as how things are going in my life. I mean, other than school, I actually finally had my other two classes yesterday, which haven't met for the first week of school. Yeah, we kind of had this weird thing where the first day of school was on a Wednesday, and I had a couple of Monday-Wednesday classes that decided to cancel that day. And Monday was Martin Luther King Day, so we didn't have school. So yesterday, Wednesday, was the first day that those classes were meeting, even though it was a full week after all the other classes started. So, whatever. Finally got to those classes. They're both programming classes. One is more advanced stuff in Java. One is kind of basic C stuff, which I've done C++ a lot, so C probably isn't going to be that hard. The Java one, I've pretty much done this stuff in Java, so that's not going to be hard. My other two classes, my weather whatever one, basically talking about natural disasters, seems like a somewhat interesting class, but hopefully shouldn't be very hard at all. I'm kind of taking it as like a, cakewalk class to up my average. And then there's the class that I just got done today, which is my linear algebra class, which is going to be much more challenging. I took linear algebra last semester and failed, and partially because of not putting enough effort into it, but I really need to get on it and make sure that I understand and know all the stuff that they're going through, because that was a big part of the problem, was that the first test was a little bit too easy, I guess, and I did really well, and I was like, well, if I don't have to pay attention to that, then I don't have to pay attention to our other tests either, and so I kind of stopped paying attention, and that's a really bad way to learn, as it turns out. Don't take that model of deciding, I'm gonna skip half the classes and, not do the homework, and then try and study and figure it all out in the last 5 hours before the test, because you can't really learn all that information in that amount of time. Not that I can learn it from my professor either this semester or last semester, because both of them, English is not their first language, and they have very heavy accents. I think the entire staff that teaches linear algebra at this school is that they all have at least the two I've taken, and they are definitely different teachers, but both of them have a very heavy accent. I believe both are from India. Both don't have a very good way of explaining things, even once we get past the whole language barrier. And the fact that, I have to listen real closely just to make sure I know which word they're saying. They teach by examples, they'll, the way they'll tell you how to do something is not tell you how to do it, but do it themselves, and then ask if there are any questions, and that doesn't really work if you don't know what's going on, and you don't really feel like asking questions, because when people ask questions, you don't understand the answer half the time anyway. So I'm really not learning it from the professor, but Katie is going to help me learn it. She already helped me learn a lot of the stuff from the earlier stuff, so once I already know this stuff, I can go to class and say, oh yeah, that's what he's talking about. But learning this stuff for the first time is not going to work with this guy, so I'm just going to, write down the homework, take the homework home, do the homework I understand, ask Katie about the homework I don't understand, and go about the class that way. They also all use this really crappy book. It's like, I read reviews online for this book when I was going to buy it, and it was like, no, don't buy this book. If you have a class that requires this book, buy some other book and learn it from the other book, and like, you know, if they require the homework from this book, maybe you need both, but this book will not help you learn in any way. And it's partially because the book has the same teaching style, the same crappy teaching style that these teachers have, these professors have. They, you know, it goes through example after example, but never actually tells you how it's doing the examples. It just expects you to look at the example and figure out how to do it from there, which sometimes you can do and sometimes you can't. And there's no actual explanation of how they got from point A to point B. Sometimes, you know, it's terrible. So I am almost at work. I am late because this professor also, in case you can't tell, I don't like the guy that much. This professor also decided that, and as he seems to do, he, like, within the last, 3 minutes of class or something, decides to try and cram in something extra that he wasn't even probably going to get to, and then ends up keeping an extra few minutes. Which an extra few minutes wouldn't make a big difference to most people, but because I take the buses, it means missing the bus that would get me here on time, and the next bus doesn't come for another 10 minutes. So I take the 10-minute later bus to my car, and therefore I'm at my car 10 minutes later than I should be, and therefore I'm at work 10 minutes later than I should be. In fact, it's 10 minutes later than I should be right now, and I'm not even there yet. So, whatever. Not too happy with linear algebra, but I'm gonna get through it. I've got to get through it. It's required for my degree. I'll deal with it. Okay. I think I covered far too many topics in this video. I've been talking the entire time I've been coming home, so it's a very long video. I'm sorry that you had to watch the whole thing, but maybe you already turned it off. Well, I guess you didn't, because I'm talking to you as in the viewer, so you're still watching. Maybe you had to, turn it off and come back or something, because it was like, okay, Shane, I'll pick up again from, the 15-minute point. Whatever. I'm ending this video now. You have a great day, and I will talk more at you tomorrow, probably.